Hi, everybody. Another Thursday night. I hope everyone's doing well and trying to keep their cool the best they can. A lot of pressures under these days that come up upon you without even thinking that there are any. And they're usually internal pressures. And it's not always comfortable to relate to them or deal with them. So please be patient with yourselves and try to be as kind to yourself as you can. And every now and then think of others the same way. None of us are perfect. Just please try and remember that. I'm just going to take something out of here. Great. Uh, there are a few questions. There's a question that I didn't finish off with Toshi's questions at the seminar. And maybe I'll just put my specs on just in case I miss something. The question is, you've mentioned that the heart is able to, it's the heart center, is able to combine energy from the three lower systems and bridging energy to the upper systems. Is there more you can say about this combining process? A lot, as you probably realize, this whole combining process happens most of the time without anybody even knowing it. And you may not know that, but our personalities are such that we indicate that these things are happening unless we can actually perceive them happening. The only reference points that we have is how we function within the personality that we've already constructed. This is quite an amazing feat, actually, if you look at some of the ways of thinking about energy combining or frequencies combining, and realizing at the same time that through the practice of use of our personalities, we've been consistently involved with acting out, relatively speaking, the way you've considered it necessary to do so. And that usually aligns with the concept related to a thing that we call personality. Energy coming from the root center, the gonad center, solar plexus, thoughts that we have in relationship to what we call our mind in our little cavity here, and also how we respond to others, gauged primarily by how we have learned to respond to others, or how we believe we think we should. It's not always pretty, and it's not always honest either. Most of our dilemmas are involved with not really understanding ourselves, and therefore we pigeonhole ideas in our minds. No negativity attached to it. It's just what we do, as this I should react to, and that I should react to, and this I should say this about, that I should say this about. And there's a diatribe, actually, of expressions that we value. And these are cultivated through the use of personality structures or energies coming from how we deal with life physically, root center, how we deal with how things affect us, and how we consider we need to express ourselves under any circumstance, the will center, and the emotional dispositional center, which is really strong, and how much intensity we should direct towards another under a certain, let's say, context. When you begin to have a thing that I often call mind open. And this, I'm going to talk a little bit with Deborah's questions again, if I can find them. Is really, gosh, a little complicated. Our expression, the best we can, how we attempt to be logical about things, is really a bunch of building blocks that we've been involved with from early on. And through education, through just having parents the way we have, dealing with friends the way they have learned how to deal with us, and allowing ourselves to begin to take a close look at how we function. Here's the dilemma. When you start to engage with mind, it's not the same as engaging with our emotional expressions that we call valuable and we call them mental, but in fact, they're highly charged emotionally. There is nothing wrong with that emotional mind. As a matter of fact, it's clearly something that we need to have, clearly something that is really very often linear, not always, but often linear. And it exposes a reference towards being bright or smart in our world. We learn how to memorize things. We learn how to put things together. We learn how to try to be open enough to understand things beyond what we believe we understand already. That certainly isn't negative, and neither should it be called that. Each individual comes up with things differently. We have a horrendous reflex within us to be judgmental about what a person says. And that reflex is very protective on our part relative to how we engage with things. Each person grows through their method of engaging with themselves. Unfortunately, we don't even notice that might be real. The key in this is beginning to notice that it might be real. In other words, what I mean by that is starting to notice how you function in your day-to-day without even considering judging that. And when you start to do something like that, first of all, you might think that that is a kind of logical thing. Yeah, you're watching things out there, things in here as well. And you're trying to make sense of value judgments that are reflexive, very quick, often, that come out of your mouth, and you value them. And then you can go on to something else past that, depending on how great your need is to defend the relationship you have with what you said. That is an emotional engagement. Mind that I'm talking about can be cultivated, but let's say, I'm trying to use some words here that might make some sense. It comes out of noticing how you function and comes out of not judging the very thing that we've been trying to do. Not judging how you function. And that touches us in our daily life. A relationship with trying to be kind to yourself, generous to yourself, is different than feeling a tremendous level of assessment based on finding you not as able as you thought you were. Oh my gosh. But that's an interaction with the lower system. An interaction with an upper system is to recognize that, first of all, with some people, they're very extroverted. Other people, very introverted. They don't say enough a lot. Extrovert, they say a whole lot. But in everyone who's extroverted, there's an introverted aspect, an aspect inside that is not noticed by the outside. This externalized version of how you function. And the same is true when you're talking about introverted people. There could be a whole lot going on inside an individual, but externally they're relatively quiet. Knowing that you're like that and watching you on the inside or from the inside, watching how you function externally, you're trying to just see how that is. Just see it. No assessment necessary. And that is a method of beginning to perceive an activity related to mind. Strange. But you're watching from a place that is attempting not to judge. You can see if you have a reaction, you can see the reaction occurring and you realize you've already started to judge. I say, oh, okay, that's what I do. End it right there. I didn't know that. End it right there. Then, instead of allowing yourself to be harsh with you, allow yourself to recognize that this is a consistency. This is part of the personality template that you've constructed so that others can understand that you're of value somehow. It can be positive or negative, doesn't matter. Either one still fits the bill. But there's no negation in that from a mind point of view. After doing this for quite a while, you notice that there's a change in your external expression. Suddenly you're going to reflexively respond, and suddenly something in you has made you hesitate and notice something different than what you naturally normally do or have trained yourself to do. In doing that, you do not then have to respond. And that is an aspect of mind. It doesn't have to respond. Emotional mind has to respond because it's trained to do so. Or, that's pretty normal. You can have an introvert that believes that if they were more expressive, they would be much more engaging with people and people would like them better. That may be true. It also may not be true. It also may be a cultivation relative to belief. And if you do that, as you have done all through your life, then you will eventually have to get to be okay with seeing that and learn how to necessarily maybe even back away from it. Because then you're training yourself to be expressive around things, and you find yourself competing with others for it because it has been a vulnerability with you. And that's, again, an emotional, intellectual orientation. Seeing it, you begin to observe and pull back a little bit. And then you begin to be okay with neither expressing yourself or neither judging somebody from the inside out, yourself included. I said, begin. This is not easy at all, but in an interesting way. Eastern orientations, some of them, I think Buddhism more than anything else, and Taoism. The Taoists and the Buddhists have a tendency to realize that this reflects an engagement with past lifetimes. If you're born in the East, you may express yourself different than how you're nurtured to express yourself in the West. So there's different nurturings that go on. If you gain access to a willingness within yourself to notice and begin to understand the relationship that you have with that personality of yours without judging it, it doesn't matter what it looks like, then you begin to wander past the boundaries of what you believe unconsciously may be valuable into the world of becoming a little bit more conscious about how you could function. There are people who are introverted who are geniuses. If they begin to shift and try to be more extroverted, they say things that are not as capable as they could in their thinking process in a more introverted space. And the reason for that is extroversion is new. So it's like starting something new. So you express yourself and you think you're doing wonderfully well, even 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And then eventually, after 15, 20 years, because you're an adult, you catch on. And you can be both, but they're just expressions, methods of expression. It doesn't make you either valuable or invaluable, but we live in a world that relates to fantasy. And the fantasy I'm talking about comes about by watching movies. And it's the fantasy of how you need to be liked by others. It's not the fantasy of science fiction or whatever. It's how you think you need to be valued by another. Based on what you think is valuable. Level of engagement with that personality setting that I've been talking about is different when you're opening links to a higher state. Higher states are less purposeful towards personality orientations, but still are, because it moves towards finding a balance in the personality, in a personality. This is, on our levels, it's a little bit more difficult because we have this view versus that view. But in finding a balance within that construct, the personality from those 3 lower levels linked up with, to some degree, the brow, the forebrain, intelligence, a movement into a kind of level of creativity that shifts levels, and a kind of depth of understanding and compassion that ultimately hasn't got its own self-interest only. And another link, which includes an engagement with the higher state, higher states, and moving past the understanding or experience level that a person has in relationship to those states. So I said, in answering some of that question at the seminar, I said, if I can remember what I said that, remember, in our relationship with so-called spiritual ways of engaging, we have rules and regulations about that. And they all are focused on personality orientation. And this is not higher state orientation. But they help us to attempt to make some sense of something because it's all we have to work with. So, and there are many of those orientations, not only in the East, but in the West as well, as you all know, because we live in the West. And all of these help to some degree. Our difficulty is the same difficulty we have with spiritual growth. There is a versioning on these levels of competition between people for who's grown more than the other. It has nothing to do with higher states. It has everything to do with these states. Our interaction with higher states has very much to do with an individual being prepared to step kind of away from interfering with the link from an opening of a center all the way through from the top to the bottom, that energy can come in and flow through it without the individual personality interfering. This means a level of mind must be secure, a level of quiet opening and just watching. So you're learning how to watch energy operating through you and from another state and from the lower states. These are all states. And there's no negation in that. But there is a movement within a level of consciousness, our awareness, conscious awareness, so that we can notice certain things going on, and then that's the end of it. If a person is preparing for that, then they have shifted a bit out of the need to be really important because they're spiritual. Just a bit. Because they know the difference between a higher state and the actual engagement, the active engagements, and yes, some passive, I agree. In other words, watching appears passive, but it's not passive. It's highly active because our personalities are engaging either outside or inside of us. Case in point, if you have a reaction internally and you have a smile on your face and you're not happy with what's going on, this face is acting what it thinks it needs to do to be okay with the people around it. But inside, you may be uncomfortable, disgruntled, because you don't agree with something. It could be relative to your own views. Everybody has them. Or you've noticed that this is taking an off edge and you don't want, you're nervous about that. This engagement that you have with others. All of this is real in our world, real in relationship to the levels or states that we engage with. It's not really real. It's a reflection of how we perceive the world. When you soften down and you are watching and that energy is flowing, it is flowing outward relative to another state. You did not construct it. Wow. That is really hard to allow ourselves to take in. And there's all kinds of questions about where do I know? How do I know where it's coming from? Why should it be like that? Shouldn't it just come through us and then we're the one who's doing that because we are the representative on this state of what? You're a being of consciousness here in these planes. You're trying to maybe consider or become aware of the fact there are many, many states, many planes. It is allowed to know some of them. But in the old traditions, and I can understand it, if you are aware of some plane, somebody else may try to be aware of some other thing that they will call a higher state. It's competitive. In reality, there's no competition in that. At the higher state, the competition is gone. Because if you have two people who are able in some way, energy transmits through them into others to stimulate activity similar to their capacity in another. That's how it all works. So you have two people here on these planes, engaging with these planes. You interact with each other all the time. Part of you is in them, and they start acting like part of you, and part of them is in you, and you act out some of those things. Know that's true by your experience. In other words, by your awareness. And then begin to broaden that out and wonder whether it might be the same relative to higher states interacting with these planes. What am I talking about? I'm saying if your system is being prepared to handle energy from another state, it will be relative to, in a kind of a way, your capacity to be able to deal with that being real so that you can understand there is a kind of humility in this, as well as a sense of, without being dramatic, you just need to allow yourself to be a little bit more aware so you can watch it happening, so that you can get an angle on what's true in you. Now, the concept of truth in relationship to this one is scary a bit, because we have an imaginative factor, and without it, we would not do well in our world. We imagine something and then we reach for it and we keep going until we try and get it, one could say. And then we congratulate ourselves. That's great. It's wonderful. If you're looking for a higher state, understanding through perception, through experience, that a higher state is always in you, number one, but always willing to help you to see yourself better. This is really frustrating. Why would it be frustrating? Because our version of what a higher state does is more like it should do our bidding. And there's pieces of that in us. This is just natural for us. We like to kind of get our way a bit. I think this is normal in our world. Well, relatively speaking. The dilemma of opening, let's say, a throat center. Well, here's an idea about a throat center. A throat center begins to operate more, and it may operate more emotionally. And you happen to be interested in, the arts or engineering or anything else for that matter. And you set up your engagement. You're trying to build a bridge, but you want to find the perfect bridge. So you go through all the methods of building a bridge you can possibly find, but they're all copies of somebody else's. And you want to build that perfect bridge so you can put your name underneath the architect, Very difficult to do that. But suddenly, you have an idea that exposes itself in your visual mind because you're used to drawing things kind of three-dimensionally as an architect. And you're trying to understand, if you have a view of this particular bridge from many angles, how the strength in it will be so profoundly strong. And you can maybe use, for example, less braces, but it will still be strong based on mathematical methods, geometrical methods that you don't know about. You're trying to figure it out. Suddenly you have this image in your mind, and you put this down on paper, and then you start figuring out mathematically whether it would fit. What can I do to make this fit into a bridge? And all of a sudden it hits you. Oh, I think I know. An idea just comes into your mind. It's your mind, so it must be yours, right? But is it? Your throat center may have opened enough to engage with creatively ideas beyond what has been normal for you. This can happen very young or older. And you have cultivated through study and through experience methods of seeing in your mind spatially that allow you to be open to ideas that may enter into it. From a personality perspective, yours may not be yours. Maybe an idea from another state. Okay, I know you all aren't engineers, but this counts for anything and everything. The same is true in relationship to any of these centers. Could be true of the heart center as well. There are those around who can turn physically that heart center on. It feels mental. It also can feel emotional. And perhaps they can even perceive it. And I know this happens to be true through my experience watching others who are really able. And an emission of flow from the throat, the heart, the brow, the crown, or a different level of the solar plexus, because the solar plexus has many levels. The gonad center has many levels. After 3 or 4 levels of the gonad center, you don't even think about sexuality at all. So you engage with the time with the relationship form that you're a part of. The root center is the same way. It's not only a physical that you can see, it's beyond that. A physical, so-called energetic form, outwardly involved with different states. If this remains only theory, why would anyone think it might be important? Fair enough. At least I think that's fair enough. That's why it's important to do some of these exercises that you've all learned. And they're not only exercises to balance the energy, they're exercises to build the energy in a certain center. The center that I used, I think, at the seminar was the brow center. The energy from the root gonad and solar plexus is going to go right up to the brow, and it can be quite activated. Pretty smart stuff. But then it opens into another level. And that many call the level of mind. Because the personalized emotional dispositional structure is engaging in the personality, but the individual has the capability of watching this occur. And this can happen really early. And then it can begin to watch inside itself, just as if it's just watching. Whatever happens in there is fine. But you're watching it. And then you can utilize some of the other tools. You can open your hands and utilize energy in that structure. And you can begin to understand the depths of engagement with space-time relative to three-dimensional space and interactive with time from the time of your birth. Yes, different layers all the way through. You can start to see some of that and work with it. Also engaging with other lifetimes and helping them to be gentler, more respectful, kinder, I don't know whether to use this word, like a healing thing. And then you begin to understand that there are upper level or higher state energies moving through you at the same time that lower energies are you're involved with the lower level energies because you're engaging with people. This is vastly important to understand. You don't move into a higher state and now you're perfect and now you engage and you engage in everything that comes out of your mouth is true and all the rest of that stuff that people tend to believe in. It's not real. But what is real is that you can engage with different levels and see that that's a different level than the one I'm used to. My goodness, I don't really know where this is going. One could say, because in that level, I don't have as much experience. Well, one could then say, of course, as a personality, if it goes into stuff like that, that can't be true. And people have this experience when they're teaching. They come up with an idea. They don't know where it came from. This engineer, this bridge builder came up with an idea. They don't know where it came from. If he's totally, or her, she is totally focused on that orientation as being theirs, nothing will interfere with that. Then when they come up with looking for something else, They may have the same experience and go through that many times. Suddenly, they realize, this is interesting. I have 15 really wonderful things that I've come up with. I don't know where they came from. You can smell humility coming in. Is it okay to be humble inside and you don't have to send telegrams to everybody? I think so. I think that is part of mind, higher level of emotion as well. And honest. And this is very difficult. I hope that helps with your question, Toshi, if you happen to take a look at this. The dilemma with this is that as you engage with deeper and deeper levels, there's a reflex that occurs as well. And the reflex is, I should probably not, I don't have to study or read anything. That higher state will take care of it. I'm not a person that really aligns with that. It may be true, but I think also broadening the intellect, the emotional mind, constructs a broader form through which that higher state can operate. So read about everything. Keep it to yourself. Why? Because what you're doing, if you read about everything and you start to get pretty proud of it, then you start to say how wonderful you are. Not very subtle. Because you're still reading stuff from somewhere else. It's not a higher mind. I just recently, about a year ago, I read a book Marlene bought me for Christmas, and I thought it's going to be a great book on polymaths. In other words, people who are really interested in all kinds of things. It's something that I really think is worthwhile looking at. Polymath. It's out there. You can buy the book and read it. It tells everybody how many people are out there in the past and in the present. And it helps you to mix ideas and concepts in the intellect. But it also allows you to realize one thing, and this is a really important thing. No matter how much you think you know, every time you engage with a broader engagement, you're just starting again to understand a speck broader than you could before. So basically, in a kind of a startling way, you have all the information you think you have in your head, but at the same time, you're starting again because your thoughts are a little broader than they could have been before. Then let it go. If you're broadening your mind, you're preparing to engage with higher states. But it also, primarily, you're broadening your way of thinking about a personality. And hopefully, ultimately, you become more compassionate with others who are doing the same thing, but not reading the same books. They can't be as great as you are. In fact, that's just nonsense. But we like to think smaller. Whether you think smaller or whether you think broader, when those mind states begin to function in you, or higher emotional states, or higher physical states, the experience is different than what you've had before. getting used to the experience of those different states sometimes can cause a very strong thing to occur. And that strong thing is to protect how you were previously. And the actions and the interactions that you had previously that you found were valuable in helping others to know you were valuable. And that is not a higher state. Just part of the human orientation. And to be kind, perhaps we need to go through this until we begin to understand broader, deeper, and allow others to make their mistakes as well as yourself. And not be as harsh when you make them. And at the same time, try to understand beyond what you believe you know. How many out there have ever jumped to conclusions about circumstances? I think everybody. And I could be wrong. Call me only if you never have, and you have at least a little bit of awareness of your personality. Then you'll understand how difficult it is to be unbiased. And that mind level, that higher emotional state, is unbiased. And it's not critical. And we've been told it is. And it's a matter of learning how to handle frequencies. Some we can handle a lot better than we can others. And we often use a few frequencies in our personality. And that means if you align that with colors, a few colors. And of course, we have views about colors as well. What's the higher color? What's the lower color? It doesn't have anything to do with that very much. Although, that is the favorite out there. And it's okay. Maybe we have to get to the point where we can understand better that conclusion. I think I've tried to answer that question once again. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll just shift it to the bottom. But it's been interesting, that whole relationship, especially with the heart center. The heart center is I really think it's a masterful center. You know, the three lower centers operating together open up that heart center a little bit. Also, it opened up the brow, the throat, the crown a little bit. If it's actually operating up there relative to the tree of life, you know, that kind of thing. Or Kundalini, or an engagement with the wind of consciousness. And then if it opens, it has a number of levels of growing to go through, as does the brow, as does the throat, as does a whole series of centers up in and beyond, up into the, say, chakras or centers above the head, and to the sides for that matter. And here we are trying to make sense of something. Logically, when our experience, our perception leans on our belief to form a language of expression. In other words, even our dreams are the same way. Even our images, our flashes of higher states, for example. If you have a flash of a higher state in the east or west, it may be relative to your willingness to be okay with seeing something. An angel may look like this. Here it may look like that over there. Something different. So we can put to it not only a name, but an idea behind the name. So very strong metaphorical engagement with other states. Many people have said that poetry is one of the best ways to engage with higher creative states. I'm inclined to agree it's a pretty good one. But not everybody's a poet. Not everybody likes those things. Art is another. And I happen to think science is another. I happen to think that an engagement experientially with some of the religious backgrounds, another. Tremendous amounts of one pointed, directing to something beyond yourself, not looking for something only, but yeah, it could be, but looking for internal growth. Links begin to occur. It's very difficult for us to allow an understanding that moves a little beyond our belief. And we fight that. And we fight that as a personality, as a matter of fact. This is kind of what we do. I don't think it's negative. I just think it's sometimes foolhardy. But we are curious beings. And I think some of that curiosity helps us to grow. But also we're fearful beings sometimes. And we are afraid to go beyond what we are intellectually linked with sometimes. I remember a talk I gave in Florida many years ago when we were talking about astral traveling. And I said there are basically 3 forms of astral travel. There were even more, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And I honestly said 2 of them I've experienced, and there are others I haven't. And in talking about this, there was one that came to mind at the time. It was using an idea. I don't know if you've ever seen a pith, P-I-T-H ball, very, very light material with a string on it. And I said, the Brotherhood of the White Temple, an organization out of California. I'm not sure they even exist now, but many years ago in the 60s and the 70s. And they would use that pith ball idea in their mind, held upward above their head about a foot or so, not doing it personally. In their mind, they were doing this. And they would let that pith ball swing this way and this way, forward and back, forward and back, and forward and back. And after a number of, quite a bit of experience and practicing, of which many give up, some were able to leave their body, not through their brow, but through their solar plexus. And this was there are other organizations that try to get you out of your body through the solar plexus as well. And these are just systems to get you out. But when you're out through your solar plexus, guess what? It's you out there. You're acting the same as you do in here. So cleaning that up, I said, in here, in these planes, if you do go out, you'll go out in a different layer, a different level, so that you can honestly be attempting to help people if you already are doing that here. And letting go of your ideas about what help other people need if you already are in a state of higher mind, at least in the beginnings of it. It means that you will be then involved with allowing yourself to watch that higher level show you what could be helpful to another. And this is an aspect of relationship with the higher states. Relationship. This is a key word in our engagement with growing. We have a relationship in the lower planes, emotion, physical, intellectually engaging, and we personalize that. That's a relationship. It's called personalization, personality. And we fundamentally think similarly to what we did before. Some of the thinking we have, we know. Some of it we don't have any idea about. That's being straight. It's what we do. That doesn't sound negative. It just is. We do that. In these alignments with what we do, they begin to shift and change so that you're moderating and you're watching what you do so that you can perceive an expression of flow or energy from another consciously. And it becomes just as paramount in your engagement with life as your personality view of your own self-interest or your own self-value. If it does that, then you see them both and you try to understand deeper because you're broadening out. You're like the polymath is broadening out her engagement with a whole bunch of things that they're learning about. You become a polymath, perhaps, of different states consciously. And that's a key relationship with the heart center and the crown center. Ultimately, the brow center then is used as a tool, as well as a throat center, and as well as elements of the root gonad and solar plexus. It's been great talking to you all. I don't mind saying I miss you. I haven't seen most of you for a long time. Please take care of yourselves. We'll talk later. Bye for now. Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and the grounding. And please take care of yourselves. Bye for now.